Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. And I came across some information. Actually, a friend sent it to me about this clock that they're making that Jeff Bezos has invested a lot of money in. And this clock is called the Long Now. And they're making this clock to last thousands and thousands of years. And I want to go over that because I had recently decided to go and look into the exact cycle of the Saturn Jupiter conjunctions and when was the last time we had Uranus close to the Pleiades and Saturn and Jupiter being in one of their constellations, either Aquarius or Capricorn. Like right now, they're in Capricorn. Tropical would say no, that they're not in Capricorn, but that's where they are. And if you go look at the sky, and I totally believe that when Uranus, which is the heaven planet, is close to the Pleiades, either in Taurus or right in Aries, and when Saturn and Jupiter are in a Saturn house constellation in conjunction, that brings in the golden age because Saturn is the god of the golden age. It's Cronus. So I wanted to go back in time and I went on a Stellarium to find out when the last time was. And I wanted to share it with you. And also, I went up into the future when the next time this will happen. And it is all correlating with the great year. I went through every single cycle. I figured out the math. You can go back to my old videos. I did this on the Kepler trigens and I had done all the math, but I had never gone back to look. So I was so blown away by the fact that it only happens once on an average of 25,000 years. And now I've come across that they're making this clock that actually is going on a rotation on one cycle of 25,000 years as well. So it's all very interesting that this is all correlating. And I do believe we're at the end of the great year and it's starting to look more obvious that we really are. So they're calling it the 10,000 year clock, but they want it to last more than that. And when I went and did the research, it is lasting a lot longer, and one of the rotations is 25,000 years. Danny Hills came up with this idea. I want to build a clock that ticks once a year. The century hand advances once every 100 years, and the cuckoo comes out on the millennium. I want the cuckoo to come out every millennium for the next 10,000 years. If I hurry, I should be able to finish the clock in time to see the cuckoo come out for the first time because he decided to do this in like 1995. So I believe they did hear the cuckoo on the year 2000. So Brian Eno, a musician, decided to name the foundation the Long Now Foundation because his philosophy is if civilizations thought in long term, that we would live differently rather than kind of the disposable society that we're living in our concepts. So they're trying to get people to think about the future. And I think it's like they're trying to make you aware that, there's a great year, but they can't really come out and tell you, but they're kind of hinting at it. So they're using the X as the symbol, and we all know that the X is the alchemy symbol for Venus, and it also is the two X's that go across the United States, and they happen to cross at the silver archway, which is the silver gate, which again is Taurus, that the Pleiades is in, which is really your third eye. Okay, so that's what the silver gate of Taurus is. It represents your third eye when you run the constellations for the cardinal cross, Pisces at the feet, Aries at your head. I'll drop some of the links of them talking about it in interviews and about the concept of the clock in the description box. They're also collecting books so that the books are saved because they're explaining that because everything's on digital now, that gets wiped out. And this is a storefront in San Francisco that they're using to do their meetings in. But eventually the books will go with the clock. To reach the clock, engineers and visitors must take a grueling pilgrimage through the desert to a remote limestone mountain near Van Horn, Texas. In fact, details of the journey to the 10,000-year clock sounds more like a journey to the center of the earth. And once you arrive at the hidden entrance in an opening of the rock face, you find a stainless steel door and then a second door behind that. And this acts like a crude airlock, keeping out dust and wild animals. You rotate it around its round handles to let yourself in, and then seal the doors behind you. It is totally black. You head into the darkness of the tunnel a few hundred feet along. At the end, there's a mildest hint of light on the floor. You look up, and there's this teeny dot of light far away. And at the top of the 500-foot long vertical tunnel, about 12 feet in diameter, the dot of light beckons you. You begin to ascend. So they're seeing it like the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Rosetta Stone or the Antikythera device. And here's like a small version of it. It's interesting. It reminds me of like the two pillars, the sun and moon pillars. And then the symbol on the black stone, this goes back to Islam and the black stone. It relates to the Canopus stone, the black stone, but it's the exact same Vesica Pisces symbol that's on the Sikh Scepter Taranis coin, which is like the Vesica Pisces, which is always going back to like the womb of the woman or the Mother Earth womb. The Sikh Scepter Taranis, that the video I did about Lincoln and Julius Caesar and Trump and Get Off My Neck, George Floyd, it still keeps coming into reality, this saying. And I also went and checked it out for the gematria, and it's 83, which comes to 11, which would be the two pillars again. The winter solstice also comes out to 83, and the 88 with Mercury, and we get the number 24, which is Christmas Eve. And of course, season 5 on The 100 Show had the Sikh Scepter Taranis, and this all ties into the whole story of what's going on right now with all the script line going through that movie. And her name is Octavia. Octavia goes back to the moon cycles. The metonic cycle of the moon, the octon, is 1/5 the metonic cycle, which is 47 synodic months. And this goes down to the math. There's like Plato had this math. They were measuring it's like the 47th. Anyhow, I'm not getting into all the math of it, but the number 47 ties into this ancient math that they were using through the sky. And it recurs about 20 to 25 cycles. The cycle seems to be a coincidence. The periods of the moon orbits around the Earth and the Earth's orbits around the sun are believed to be independent and not have any known physical resonance. But, I know there's Octavia has to do with, I think, a Julius Caesar story, but I really do think that all ties into the moon and the moon cycles. 1/5. Interesting with the pentagram with Venus as well. So they're indicating both the sidereal day and the precession of the zodiac. So they're taking the real sky, using the precession, which actually loses time in the sky. Every 72 years, we lose a degree. Around this will be a display showing the position of the sun and the moon in the sky, as well as the phase and angle of the moon. Outside this will be the ephemeral dial, showing the year according to the current Gregorian calendar system. This will be a 5-digit display, indicating the current year in the format of 0-2000 instead of the more usual 2000. So they're just explaining how they're just going to be tracking it all. So here they're explaining that even though it's a 10,000-year clock, the natural cycles of the precession of the Earth's axis is 25,765 years. And this whole great year thing doesn't stay at a fixed time. Okay, that's what I want, why I wanted to go back and look into the time. every great year is a different number, okay? Because the math of the sky, because we're losing time with the sun precession of the zodiac, and the sun doesn't get back to where it originally was every 72 years. The sky kind of compresses, like the constellations kind of compress. So you can't get your math to like work out exactly, okay? But there are math that you can kind of, you know, have an estimate, and then it's might be off a year or two, you know, when we're working on these big long-term time spans. So yeah, so anyhow, they're mentioning that they want to do it more the natural cycle, and they're bringing up the great year. And this is what this clock is all about. It's about the great year. They're also going to be using different power systems, but they can, if the power goes out, or if there's no power in the long term, that they're going to be using the temperature from inside this mountain. The spot they picked was in Nevada, but the mountain near Van Horn, Texas is where they're going to make it, and then they're going to move it. But guess whose property it's on? Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. So there we go. It's at his place, and then they're going to eventually build it there in a mountain, and then they're going to move it to Nevada. So the Long Now Foundation has purchased the top of Mount Washington near Ely, Nevada, which is funny that it's the EL, like the L, Elohim. Also the elementals, the Elvins, which is surrounded by the Great Basin National Park. From the permanent storage of the full-size clock, once it's constructed, it will be housed in a series of rooms, the slowest mechanicalism visible first, in the white limestone cliffs, approximately 10,000 feet up the Snake Range. So it's in the Snake Mountains, no coincidence. And the site's dryness, remoteness, and lack of economic value should protect the clock from corrosion, vandalism, and development. Hills, is it Hills? I can't see how, sorry. Hillis, is it Hillis? Hillis chose this area of Nevada in part because of the home to the number of the dwarf bristlecone pines, which the foundation notes are the nearly 5,000-year-old trees. The clock will be almost entirely underground and only accessed by foot traffic from the east. So this is the Snake Range Mountains, and they have different peaks. The Snake Range includes two groups of peaks. The southern section rises quickly from the point near the border with Lincoln County. Of course it's Lincoln. Why wouldn't it be Lincoln? Reaching the summit of Granite Peak. There's also Mount Washington, the Pyramid Peak, of course, the pyramid because it's the alchemic symbol for fire, and Baker Peak, which is the bakers that make the manna bread. Oh, all the mountains are named exactly for the story line. That's crazy. So it keeps going back to Lincoln, right? So there's a county town in Lincolnshire, and it was Old English called Lindsalin. This word Salin, I'm going to refer to it later with something else to tie in with the Druids. From the Latin Lindum Colonia, from the Latinized from a former British Lindo, which is pool or lake, and in Welsh it's also a lake. Okay, so this all ties into the nectar of the gods. Lincoln ties to the nectar of the gods with this pool, lake. I have other information on it. I'll do another video on that and go into that a little bit more. So also the mountain has a Mount Moria, which is the Moray, which is the three fates that decide, you know, do you ascend, do you die, or do you get reincarnated? They have the string and they measure it. I've done other videos on that, but it's the Moray. So yeah, it's deciding your fate at the end of the great year. So these trees that are the bristlecone pines are the oldest tree ever recorded. The tree is like called Methuselah, and they're these kind of old shrubby trees, but they found one in Eastern California. It's 4,852 years old tree. Like, I'm just kind of like, what? So the species located in the White Mountains of California were measured by Tom Harlan, a researcher from the Laboratory of Tree Ring Research, to be 5,062 years old as of 2010, so it's even older. This would make it the oldest known non-clonal tree in the world. The identity of the specimen was kept secret by Harlan. Harlan passed away in 2013, and neither the tree nor the core Harlan studied have been found, making the age of the existence of the tree unable to be confirmed. The confirmed oldest tree of this species is the Methuselah. It's also located in ancient bristlecone pine forest of the White Mountains. Methuselah is, oh, this is the other tree. So there's two of them, right? I'm understanding here. As measured on the annual ring count on a small core taken with the increment borer. Its exact location is kept secret. So there's this ancient old tree that's nobody knows where it is. So my big long video of Don't Be Alice, I did that whole thing with the MAGA mother and tying it all into Melania Trump. And I remember she went to this Snake River, which is in the same location as these Snake Range Mountains. And she went there a couple years ago. And of course, the symbolism, there's a gateway to get out of the great year, and it's a whole bunch of horns, which is really the horns in your head, the lateral ventricles, which is your third eye, which represents the Silver Gate, Taurus, the Pleiades. It's always about the Pleiades, the seven sisters, the seven hills on Capitol Hill of Rome, the seven hills in Washington, I was told by one of my subscribers. The Washington was originally named New Rome, and there was 7 hills. So it's always about the 7 sisters and Taurus. Yeah, so the 7 sisters were like carved in these ancient caves. And Robert Suffer did a video recently about this white bull and Europia being on its back, and he believes that Europia, which is what Europe is named after, is the Pleiades. And I really think like the white bull is really the silver bull. It's the Silver Gate. It's the gate of, well, it's Isis, right? And it's her gate is the Silver Gate, which is where in St. Louis, the Silver Archway, like I said before. So it's like, yeah, it always ties into the Pleiades. Everything's about the Pleiades. So this is funny. It means to sail, the Pleiades. Okay, come sail away, on the ship. Oh my goodness, it's the harvest. They're the ones that harvest us, the Pleiades. Oh look, and Selin, Mount Selin they're from. And that ties into Lincoln again, and Lindy Selin. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. All ties into the harvest. So the Vanity Fair article about FLOTUS visiting the Snake River, per comms staff, flotilla, they're using the word float, passed by a bald eagle roosting in a tree alongside the riverbank. The Pool report reads, that seems rather likely. One can almost picture it, out there in Wyoming, rolling down the river with a handful of 4th graders and a man talking about antelopes and moose. A woman catches out the corner of her eye a majestic bird, its wings tucked away from now with nothing to prove. For a moment, maybe, all this seemed worth it. The bowing, the scraping, the hosting, the scrutiny, the big white cage, a husband unbridled, having to tell children to be their best, while the country is tipped towards its worst, and other children are being held captive without their parents. What kind of article is this? It's like, oh my God, I feel like we're really living in Alice in Wonderland. So Lincoln ties into a North American passerine bird called the Bob Lincoln or Bobolincoln. Can't make it up. The way I figured this out for the next great year is that Uranus has to be around the Pleiades, either in Taurus or a little bit in Aries, and Saturn and Jupiter have to do a conjunction. Now, Uranus has a orbit of 83 years on average, and Saturn and Jupiter do a conjunction every 20 years. But it takes 383 years for Uranus to be back at that location and Saturn and Jupiter doing a conjunction. But it takes for Saturn and Jupiter to do a conjunction in Saturn's house and Uranus to be back in around the Pleiades, it actually takes like close to 25,000 years. So this is the next time it's going to be in Saturn and Jupiter in Capricorn. It's in the year 25,970. And we have Mars on Shambhala star, that's Heaven's star down there at the skirt of Virgo. Yeah, I find it interesting that the sun is in Aquarius on at the end of this great year that's coming up. It's that I find fascinating because usually, now it's in Sagittarius, which is Jupiter's house. And if you look right at the top of the screen, you can see Uranus is just on right up by the Pleiades at the same time. And this is the last time it happened. The sun is in Gemini on the Christmas Eve, and Saturn and Jupiter are in Aquarius, still ruled by Saturn, which would make the time change to the Golden Age. And you can see Uranus is again right by the Pleiades on the shoulder of Taurus, which is almost into Aries, the I Am. And this was in 22,427 BC on Christmas Eve. This was the last time it happened. That's a long time ago. And here's an up close, and I wanted to see where Enki was. And of course, Enki's like right there. And Circe, she's the harvest goddess, and she's there too. And this is supposed to be, Enki is really Jesus. And this is just explaining that the great man-fish in Sumerian was Enki, and it's also relating to Aquarius and Capricorn. What I didn't know, that there's an Enki division that is a faint line that splits the outer rings of Saturn into two. Okay, so although the embedded moon Pan, so we got the Pan moon, is nowhere to be seen, there is a bright clump-like feature visible here within the Enki division. See revealing Pan's influence for further information about Pan and the Enki gap and its ringlets. The view looks towards the sunlit side of the rings from about 17 degrees below the ring plane. So we got the number 17, which is Q. But anyhow, it's just interesting that the Pan god's in there as well. And I really do think the Pan god is really I Am Aries because of the horns, the way that horns are shaped. Okay, so here's the visual of the Enki division. You can see it's on the outer ring here, and they've got the Pan, I guess the Pan moon in there as well. We didn't have the Prometheus. Prometheus is like, he gave the fire to the humans, like kind of almost like Lucifer, giving the light to the humans, and so he got in trouble for it. But yeah, it's all tied into Saturn. So I just started reading The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. There was a quote in here about Albert Pike saying that the lost word of Masonry is concealed in the name, the Druid god Hu. The meager information extant concerning the secret initiations of the Druids indicates a decided similarity between their mystery school and the school of Greece and Egypt. Hu, the sun god, was murdered, and after a number of strange ordeals, the mystical rituals were he was restored to life. So similar to Osiris. So the Hu god in the Old Kingdom was associated with Sia. He was depicted with the retinue of Thoth, with whom he was occasionally identified. In the Middle Kingdom, all gods participated in the Hu and Sia, and was associated with Ptah, who created the universe by uttering the word of creation. Hu was depicted in human shape as a falcon or a man with a ram's head. Okay, so we're back to the ram, which is Aries, and this is Hu that all the Druids worship. He is the god. He's the sun god. Okay, this is why on the cardinal cross, Aries represents the sun. Okay, so this is the high cross with the moon in its proper place, Cancer. No, the moon only rules one constellation, it's Cancer, and that's on the cardinal cross. So that is where ascended souls go to the cardinal cross, and it just keeps confirming that this Aries is the high cross. Okay, so Hu, there's a song that you can sing called the Hu song, and there's lots of people that do it, and it's just basically, and when you do that frequency, your ears start to vibrate inside, and it's supposed to make you calm and blissful. And I'll post some links about it because there's lots of young people doing it, and I found a video of them doing it. So I'll post that in the description as well. So I was trying to find songs about the moon, and I came across this song called Freedom Fighters and the Merkaba. It's called the Moonlight Purpose. Sting has a whole bunch of songs about the moon as well. But anyhow, I'm going to drop this in the description box as well. But this is one of the screenshots I took of it's like a cartoon YouTube video that goes with the song, but of course it has everything about Aries in there, even the constellation, and he turns into a golden ram. Okay, so it's not a new idea. The 17th century Isidore commented on the likeliness of the uterus being equivalent to the ram's horns, okay, which is also, we've got these horns in our head, which is our third eye. So it's all, tying into our third eye is also working with the uterus of the woman, which is really Mother Gaia. It's kind of representing that. Like everything's mirroring, right? It's on the bigger scale and smaller scale. And then they're going into here about the tuba is a Latin word for trumpet, related to the English tube in the textbook of the fallopian tubes that are the oviducts, which also ties into the sheep word ovine. So yeah, it's all tying in. It's like it's all mirroring, but it's also going back to the horns of the shofar trumpet as well. So, it's all speculation, but it's like, it's pretty, it's not the first time this is being, talked about. This was back in the 7th century. But really, it all ties back to Venus because Venus rules your third eye, Taurus, and then we also have Venus ruling Libra, and it's supposed to be the balance of your kidneys, but I bet you it's the uterus. I guarantee you it's the uterus because there's too much symbolism to the uterus, and I think it's all to do with Venus always. It's always Venus, and you have to have the balance, and you have to be in balance with Mother Earth. And Mother Earth is the Vesica Pisces. So the whole thing about the fish, is really the uterus. It's the womb, and it has to tie to your third eye so you can see through the illusion and you really know who God is, and God is really Mother Earth. It's really nature. Nature rules us. It's the elementals. She's coming back to harvest the phosphorus. It's Earth. Earth isn't dying. She's coming back to get us so she can live, basically. That's what it is. And she'll let a few people come through and go to paradise because, you can get to inner Earth if you happen to transcend. They also found the golden ratio in the uterus. And if you watch some of my old videos, there's one of the uterus looks like it's around the Silver Gate, like the park around the Silver Gate from an aerial view looks like the uterus as well. Yeah, it was Bobby Simpson. He had discovered that, one of the gematria guys. Oh, when I say Silver Gate, it's St. Louis, the Silver Archway. Okay, so the ram also ties to Jupiter with the Amun ram. And then it's several words derived from the ancient Egyptian name Amun via the Greek form Ammon and the Ammonite, which is a marine um, mollusk, which is a flat partition spiral shell. So it looks like golden ratio, right? It's the golden ratio shell, and it's also the horn of Ammon and ammonia, um, which ties into urine. It's also the ammonium chloride, which ties into batteries, which basically we are. Um, and let's see what else it has here. There is also a part of the brain called the horn of Ammon, a group of nerve cells within the hippocampus, which are clustered together in the shape of a horn and make the horn of Ammon. So it's not only the horns are the lateral ventricles, so we also have these horns in the hippocampus. So and then, it's all referring to memory. It's going back to the memory, which is all ties into the Nemosin River. But it's like Aries people supposedly have short-term memory. They don't hold grudges for long because of this way of how they remember. It's more short-term and not long-term. Um, and then it goes into the RAM, random access memory in your computer is called the RAM. It's interesting, how it all ties in. It's like how the sky is mirroring us, and then they're also naming computer parts after the same thing. So it's like, it's crazy. Yeah, so here's the ammonite shell. So this is really the RAM Aries. Golden ratio. So here it's explaining that Aries and Libra were the axis of the two equinox at one time, and the competition between Arachne and Pallas and Athena might be represented in these two equinoxes. Yeah, and Athena ends up being the winner, the golden one. So here you can see back in the year 2363 BC, on the spring equinox, the sun is in Aries. And here's the infinity symbol of the sun, how it goes through the sky. And you can see the equinoxes there and the dates. But, obviously the constellations change over time. What they are now weren't what they were before, and they won't be in the future. So interesting in Hindu, India, Ramrela is also tying into the Golden Age. So we have the word Ram again. And the Ides of March would be with Aries, and that's when they did the assassination of Julius Caesar and the fall of Rome, creating a 3.5 year civil war. So they say the um, age of Aquarius starts on the vernal equinox, spring equinox, when the sun is there on March 21st, like 20th, 21st. And so I went ahead, and you can see it in the year 2400. But I'm starting to think, like, is that just like the number 24 is like this year, not this year, but in 2024, when the second eclipse goes through, and they have the alchemic symbol for the 24 Olympics in Paris as the Jupiter alchemic symbol. So it's kind of like, are they just mirroring that number and then bringing it to now? Because like that's like everything that's going on in the world right now, I really do think this is the tribulation, and I just can't see it not being this, and then that it ends up happening like 400 years from now. It doesn't make sense to me. So we'll have to wait and see, but time will tell. But this is what I wanted to just check it out, and you can see the sun's just getting into Aquarius on that year. So the Sikh Semper Tyrannis historic usage was being used, around Kennedy's assassination when, this was all going on in the United States. And I am a man, they're using the I am. Then we had the JFK Jr. film, I Am JFK Jr. So they're using it in, it's kind of like mirroring always the same thing, because the I am is Aries, the ram. Okay, so the Druids had a great number of feast days. The new and full moon and the sixth day of the moon was sacred periods. It is believed that the initiation took place only on the two, um, hang on a sec, I think it says equinoxes. Yeah, sorry, it says solstices and the two equinoxes. At dawn on the 25th day of December, the birth of the sun god was celebrated. So we have, Christmas Eve, okay, which is all to do with the Druid celebrations. The secret teachings of the Druids are said by some to be the trincter of the Pythagorean philosophy. The Druids had a Madonna or Virgin Mary or Mother with a child in her arms and was sacred to the mysteries, and their sun god was resurrected at the time of year corresponding to which modern Christians celebrate Easter. Okay, so I think maybe he dies on the winter solstice but comes back to life on Easter. Both the cross and the serpent were sacred to the Druids, who made the former by cutting off the branches of an oak tree and fastening one of them to the main trunk in the form of the letter T. The oaken cross became symbolic for their superior deity. They also worshiped the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the moon received their special veneration. Caesar stated that Mercury was one of their chief deities of the Gauls, and the Druids are believed to have worshipped Mercury under the similitude of the stone cube. So we have the stone cube on these tracing boards. They also had great veneration for the nature spirits, the fairies, the gnomes, and the underlings, little creatures of the forest and rivers to whom many offerings were made. Describing the temples of the Druids, Charles Heckerthorne, in The Secret Society of All Ages and Countries, says the temples within the sacred fire were preserved, were generally situated on the eminences and in the dense groves of oak, and assumed various forms. Circular, because the circle was the emblem. So this is really cool because I created this circle, right? That's out in my woods that I showed you guys. And it says here, Geoffrey Higgins states that Hugh, the mighty, regarded as the first settler of Britain, came from a place which the Welsh triads call the Summer Country, the present site of Constantinople. And Albert Pike says the lost word of masonry is concealed within the Druid god Hugh. So really interesting. I had no idea about this Hugh god and the sound that people sing. It's called the God Song. Yeah, I wonder what the Hugh, like it's the 8th letter is H and the 21st letter is U. So yeah, so it comes to 29. So it's like 9, 9 and the two ones again. So yeah, it always comes back to 11, right? So interesting. So I wonder if that's why he says the Hugh has the secret code in it. And here's the tracing board with the two cubes, that they're saying could be Mercury. And I know on the mutable cross we have Jupiter, Jupiter on the pillars, and Mercury, Mercury would be on the bottom, or you could say on the ladder. Two Mercuries on the ladder, or maybe the two cubes are the Mercury, right? So that's for the mutable cross. So the Kepler trigons, come out to this Star of David. These are Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions, and you can see how they shift around the wheel. And it takes that many times before it gets back to the location, when then Uranus, gets back to Aries at the same time as one of their conjunctions. So it's all a big mathematical clock, and it's just fascinating that it takes that long to repeat the pattern, but it would make sense, because everything's just shifting and everybody's on a different orbit. It's really amazing that they could figure it out way back then without a computer. It just blows my mind. And there's the winged planet, one up above and then one below with the same Star of David in it, Saturn, Jupiter. This is Saturn, Jupiter is the Star of David, so this is the winged planet. Hard to find a picture of Saturn and Jupiter in conjunction. Like, you can't find it on the internet at all. And I think it would look like a winged planet because it's like if Saturn's in front and has its rings, and then Jupiter's behind. It's almost like the red ball with its wings. But the best one I could find was this one, and you can kind of use your imagination and kind of get that visual just from this picture. So I found this old zodiac pictures, and they're showing like the sun, like how bright it is, but they also have the pictures. And the December picture is the bees and the honey pot. I was just like, ah, because it goes back to the Muscaria constellation with the ship for the bees, and then the honey pot above the ship. So yeah, and it's on the month of December. So this is all tying into the Druid celebration on the 24th, and the Saturnalia festival. That was always like the changeover of the golden age. So I'm starting to, it's all piecing together. So, if nothing happens this Christmas, I'll just be like really dumbfounded. I'll just be like, what? And then I'll just go, okay, I don't know what's going on at all. So, but anyhow, it looks like all the ancient history is all pointing to the month of December. We have Saturnalia, and we have this Saturn Jupiter conjunction that's really rare when we have heaven, close to Pleiades. So everything seems to be in exact alignment, and it's just, you just got to sit back and just watch the show. It's the greatest show on earth, and the world is the stage, just like Shakespeare said.